Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for inviting us. So yeah, my name is Nathan de Ruyter. I'm the managing director of Eurexalt Canada. We're here today with Emmeline Bardou, who leads our kind of business development activities in research in particular, and some other consulting, other activities. So we've prepared a presentation. The presentation basically covers two parts. First, we'll give you kind of a brief on some of the market developments, some kind of updates. It's it's fairly high level, but I think there's some, as we end the year, it's been a pretty specific, extraordinary year for all of us. So I'll give some kind of high level helicopter overview of where things stand and what are kind of some of the projections, what we see in the mobility market, particularly going forward. And then Emmeline, she will briefly touch on some of the specific kind of new offers that we have for MSUA members around our research products. So we'll share with you that at the end. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them along the way. I'm happy to answer those, or we can at least reserve some time at the end as well to just to address any of your questions. So without further ado, I will jump into the presentation. So the slide number 2, as it says, 2020, a very pivotal year for the ecosystem. So if you look at different things, obviously, that we track in terms of financing, in terms of innovations, in terms of business model, market dynamics, a lot of things happened. Just kind of a sample here is listed, which I kind of a number of things that definitely stand out for this year. Number one element, I think, is the relatively high number of high-profile bankruptcies. Most of them seem to be moving along and being able to exit the Chapter 11 process probably early next year. Obviously, as well, the innovations and new developments are still quickly ramping up. So Starlink has been one of the main focus news stories in this year. I think they've been, pretty much on this aggressive schedule of launching satellites. Now over 900 Starlink satellites. They have been awarded this RDOF subsidy of close to 900 million earlier this week. So definitely they're making good progress for providing broadband across the a large part of the globe. Then there's also some other developments. We'll talk a lot about it a little bit later as well. So we're seeing a lot of new investments in new technologies in high throughput satellites. So not only, let's say, increasing throughput, but also seeing more flexible standardized satellites like the Optus 11 order and previously with Inmarsat orders. And that, I think, is one of a major critical change in how new satellites are going to be built and what capabilities it can provide in the coming years. And then if you look at what happens on the kind of business activity in terms of business models, we see two major trends. One, I would say, is more this vertical integration. The best example, obviously, is the Intelsat acquisition of Gogo's commercial aviation business, where operators more and more try to push to get closer to the customers. And the other part, I think, it's partnerships. Obviously, it's something that has been happening, in previous years as well. But we see more and more of those partnerships as there's been a lot of investments. Now, obviously, we need also to make sure that we monetize those opportunities or those investments, basically. And we see Inmarsat, Hughes, for example, collaborating to put, both their strengths together to better enter or penetrate the broadband in-flight connectivity opportunity in North America. We've seen another interesting development where the big tech players like Microsoft are extending their investments and partnerships with satellite operators to provide satellite connectivity services around the globe. So really a lot of things, I think, in just 2020 has happened. And then I've not yet discussed the biggest single event, obviously, which is the COVID-19. So the next slide basically looks at COVID-19. And obviously, I think everybody in the world is impacted by COVID-19, but the let's say the extent to the impact, the severity of the impact, and probably as well the duration of the impact highly varies by different segments. So this slide kind of summarizes or gives you kind of a snapshot of where we perceive the biggest impacts of COVID-19 has been and will probably linger on. I think there's no surprise for all of you that cruise and commercial aviation are kind of the biggest impacted verticals, obviously with, air and cruise travel down significantly. Obviously one of the biggest questions is always, when do you expect, let's say the return to growth, or let's say even return to the pre-COVID levels. And I would say, and what is kind of the longer term impacts? I think obviously it's not always easy to project. The vaccine developments looks positive, would be very important for commercial aviation, obviously, and as well for the cruise. So, from our forecast currently, if you look at that, we would, I would say, cruise, we would expect 2024 to be an area, to be kind of the milestone where we would reach pre-COVID 90 levels. Commercial aviation, we even expect that potentially to be at 2023. So, and again, I think, what is the structural impact is obviously one of the big questions. And the long-term impact obviously is questionable. We are generally positive that, the underlying drivers for broadband connectivity are not so much impacted. We could see a kind of negative long-term impact for cruise, where some of the older ships will likely be retired, as well as the kind of demographic of the cruise passengers being, typically, I think 50% is like 55 years and older. So there could be some psychological impact of cruise travel. We see that kind of impact not as significant in the aero passenger travel. So overall, we do expect, the underlying needs for connectivity of passengers on cruise and on airplanes to remain. The recovery time for it is still to be determined. But again, as we said, we still at this point project a 2023, 2024 timeline. Moving into slide number 4, if our general point is that the kind of the COVID-19 in general doesn't really impact structural drivers. So slide number 4 addresses the structural kind of drivers of what we call technology push and market pull. So on the technology push side, I already alluded to earlier, we see a lot of significant investments in terms of new satellites, new capabilities, as well the trend toward vertical integration, pushing new service offerings to the market. And again, we're still probably in the early phase, as most of the investments and projects are currently still being under construction and coming to the market soon. These investments have been predicated by, this changing market demand. I think everybody sees this increasing need for connectivity anywhere, anytime. As well, kind of a switch, I think, from the satellite operator's perspective is where they see the traditional video broadcasting business in decline, being increase in data and centering their investments to facilitate and drive more revenues from the data business, from the broadband business. And as well, if you look at basically the changes in market pool also covers, I would say, a bigger kind of drive of operators and other layers within the ecosystem to jointly develop services, to jointly kind of co-invest in either the ground segment or in delivering services to the end users, which can also lower kind of the entry barriers for adoption. So what we call, we've seen this kind of significant investment in new satellites, the technology push, and it creates this kind of what we call a multi-layered environment. So, from the first generation of high throughput satellites from the early 2000s, now we're at the era where we have kind of a lot of different type of flavors, addressing kind of different type of needs or requirements within the market. So obviously one of the biggest trends now is getting to fully digital flexible satellites, which were traditionally really well suited to address demand for mobility broadband, which has very say dynamically changing traffic patterns. The second kind of major trend, obviously, everybody is currently focused on, is the evolution around the NGSO constellations. There are different, again, there's also very different flavors from a more, let's say, initial design from the OneWeb constellation, the first generation, where it's more fixed, providing significant amount of capacity, to potentially the Telesat LEO constellations with a lot of fully flexibility on the satellites, being available to provide very high pool of capacity over airports or over other major demand areas. So there's a lot of different type of approaches to kind of provide a new technological capability to the market. So the next slide number 6, kind of shows what is the impact and how does it trickle down to the market. Obviously, it provides more throughput. I mean, many of you probably have recognized that the availability of throughput is something that has definitely lacked in certain parts of the world. And moreover, the cost economics of the throughput, which is obviously kind of a driver for adoption. So if you look like, from when we moved, let's say when it started 10 years ago, or no, even 15 years ago, when we moved from regular satellites or the classic Y-beam satellites into the first HCS, there was a kind of a 10 times decrease in the cost of capacity, which basically measures, the total investment you need to put, CapEx you need to spend to bring a number of, throughput, in this case, measured in Gbps, into orbit. So with the advent of the VHTS, the ViaSat-3 type of satellites and the NGSO constellations, this will bring another 10 times decrease in the cost economics for satellite capacity. So that should definitely have a significant impact on the market, as we expand that at least a part of that cost economics should be able to be passed on to the end user. Next slide, please. So what, in terms of where then the opportunities are in the SATCOM business, historically video broadcasting, which is the pink kind of the icons on the left, but it's kind of the pink bars, has been one of the major revenue drivers. Obviously, we see a decline as it's already been started since a few years with the cord cutting and the OTT solutions coming on increasingly popular. This is a market that is eroding over the next 10 years. So the new opportunities are really around broadband, and if we separate kind of the 4 main opportunities, the broadband access is probably the largest upside opportunity, where there are different solutions like direct to home, the Wi-Fi hotspots, cellular backhaul, gaining popularity and mostly driven by universal access support. So either being the US subsidizing the deployments in rural areas, but also you see a lot of developments like in emerging regions like or countries like Indonesia and many other places in the world where we see an increasing adoption of satellite to bridge the digital divide. The second, which opportunity remains the mobility, where obviously satellite is the technology of choice, and withstanding the COVID-19 headwinds, the underlying drive and need for connectivity will resume, in our view, over the next decade. So we would rather see this as a temporary kind of slowdown, a bump, rather than a structural change. And we still remain very bullish about the kind of adoption of VSAT solutions around the mobility market. Then there's other opportunities in the enterprise. So we've seen, with the cloud supporting and the kind of the SD-WAN and other kind of developments in the market where satellite can play a bigger role, largely aligned as well to the new 5G network deployments, where satellite will be able to better integrate into the let's say telecom environment. And finally, which has always been a significant support or client for satellite SATCOM connectivity, is defense. either being obviously for welfare, troop welfare, but also for backbone or UAVs connectivity for civilians. So if we zoom, next slide, one layer more about a mobility broadband opportunity. So as I said before, we do see that satellite to be the technology obviously of choice for connecting, providing broadband connectivity to my maritime aero and as well mobile MilSatcom platforms. So if we look at it today, and our addressable market really looks at, it's more of a narrow down. It doesn't include every ship, but where we see satellite solutions would be, technically and economically feasible and attractive to deploy. We would estimate today around 20% of the market, close to 20% being connected by VSAT. So there's from what we consider as the 185,000 connections that we think realistically can be achieved over the next decade, 20% is only connected today. So that also brings me to the next slide and final slide. And again, all these slides basically summarize, and we've referenced the relevant research reports to it, some of the kind of forecasts from our slides. So if I zoom into two main opportunities, obviously maritime, we split everything down from cruise to yachts to merchant, but this gives you kind of the bigger picture. So if we take maritime and commercial aero in flight, so with the 28,000 ships connected today, we would expect, as with, taking into account the current kind of headwind and slowdown, that by 2023, 2024, and as well in line with, the availability of this next generation of, high throughput satellites and NGSO constellation to really accelerate penetration, growing to 64,000 ships to 2029. Similar pattern for the aero connectivity. Obviously, airlines are in a tough area, but we do see generally that the major airlines remain committed to deploy free Wi-Fi to their assets over the next decade. So again, here we see a similar kind of 2.3, 2.4 multiple in the number of connected airplanes. Obviously, deployments also take time, so that again, there's still kind of a longer time frame to fully penetrate what we identify as a full addressable market, which is also depends on just the pace of deployments that you can do over a certain time period. Capacity leased, as you notice, that's a significant difference. It's a significant higher increase, obviously, because we believe that it's not only the number of ships or planes that will increase, it's also significantly the data rate underlying, as we have, again, more capable satellites that can provide a better service. So that basically drives the growth in capacity lease. There is obviously a stronger increase in commercial aero in flight, and that's primarily also driven that most of our models foresee a let's say free Wi-Fi model where there are the current restrictions around current use and adoption and take rates of passengers on airplanes would basically disappear over the next 10 years. So with that, I've come to the end of the presentation. I'm not sure if you want to pause here to address some questions, or alternatively, I can let Emmeline comment and explain to you our kind of specific research offer that we have for you available today.
Yeah, either way, Nathan, certainly if folks have questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any questions of Nathan based on the content that he presented. And I know we had a little bit of technical issues there, but we got them worked out.
That's got worked out, yeah.
Nathan,
Yep.
Nathan, this is Erwin Emilian. How are you?
Good.
How do you see cellular backhaul evolution compared to 5G deployment of 5G?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, the 5G, I think it's a very important trend, and it's probably more about, you know, getting satellite integrated into kind of, you know, the wider, you know, an adoption around MNOs. So again, we are pretty see it as a very important development where currently today it's still kind of has been kind of difficult to really convince MNOs and others to really adopt and fully implement cellular backhaul solutions. So I think, you know, with new equipment and with some of the new kind of constellations, for example, that provide probably maybe a sort of an ease of integration and with low latency solutions, we're pretty positive about it. I think in the other point to it that still satellite, you know, of course it can densify some networks. Most of the opportunity is in rural. So it's always what is 5G, right? So if you have 100 people, so sometimes people link 5G to very, very high throughputs. At the end, I think providing a good LTE 4G experience to many, let's say, rural areas would be sufficient. So again, it's a little bit, so I think, you know, if you look at our 5G cell backhaul deployments, and then we kind of assign 5G to a very high data rate. It's, you know, there's, you know, in the outer years where we see some growth, but it takes a bit more time if it's rural. If you look at from the angle how 5G and how, you know, the telecom industry looks at integrating satellite, I think that's the biggest benefit for 5G in the satellite market. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other question?
It's me again, Nathan. There's the traditional question, KU band versus Ka band in VSAT. How do you see Ka band moving forward in the years to come in maritime?
Maritime. Yeah, it's a good question. So obviously, there's a lot of kind of considerations around it. If you look at what kind of cost capability the new Viasat constellation or Viasat satellites can bring, I mean that can bring an advantage. So, you know, when we do kind of the interviews, I think, you know, the overall one of the kind of, and the maritime industry is at the end has maybe a little bit, you know, it's still a little bit conservative. So there was always a bit of hesitance, I think, about maybe initially, you know, the rain fade issues and so on. And I think those things are less prevalent right now. Obviously, if you look at some clients, they still prefer, or even offshore oil and gas sites, they still have the C-band connectivity for the guaranteed kind of service and the very high service availability requirements. But generally, just the available throughput, if you look at the available capacity supply that becomes available through Ka band, it does provide, I think, a potentially a cost advantage over Ku band. The other only question is, okay, you know, if you look at constellations and SpaceX, is that going to be at one point being available for the maritime market, which maybe brings the cost component more at an equal level? If we, you know, it's still difficult to really rate the cost economics around Starlink, but again, assuming, you know, some preliminary estimates that can come pretty close. So again, there's obviously as well, you know, advantage of current install rate and with Ku band and the transition of that. But if you really look at from a cost economic standpoint of capacity and you know, bandwidth cost is still obviously one of the major drivers for connectivity delivery to maritime. You know, most of the benchmarks, Ka band comes out favorably for, you know, the selected systems, obviously, which is, you know, what we look at then.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions? Take advantage of this opportunity, folks.
Exactly. We don't charge anything today.
Yeah.
So it's,
Okay. Everybody's shy. So if you come up with any questions, feel free to jump in and interrupt. But Emily?
And anyway, we can maybe share the presentation. We'll leave our coordinates in there, and if anyone has any follow-up questions, we'll be happy to address those at a later point, a later stage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nathan. It was excellent presentation. We really appreciate you being here. So I think we'll turn the floor over to Emmeline then to talk about some of the MSUA specific benefits.
Yeah, sorry for my connection. The glitch was on my connection. I hope everything will work well now. So you can see on this slide that Euroconsult has 4 different offers that you could benefit. So we have the consulting services, where Nathan, by the way, is leading our SATCOM practice. We also have the thematic training, so that's quite new. We reshaped it this year, so it's also available on our website. I will not deep dive too much in that today. We have executive summits, so I will talk about one of them today, but you might also be aware of our flagship World Satellite Business Week, which was held virtually this year. So today I want to talk to you more about our thematic research product. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So our research, so since it's Euroconsult collects, updates and assess on a yearly basis detailed market, industry, policy, program and financial information in the global international space sector. We developed proprietary database and forecast models that are systematically applied and are central to the publication of thematic research products. With over a dozen reports published every year, our research has been used as a key reference tool for 3 decades by most public and private stakeholders involved in the sector. So you might be aware of them. So here are some of them, but on the next slide, maybe you have a better visual. So if you can move to the next one. Yeah, so we share our publication in 4 main sectors. So the space sector, the Earth observation sector, the government sector, and the SATCOM sector. So as mentioned by Nathan, most of the slides that he prepared for today were extracted from our SATCOM report. So you might find them here, but also on our digital platform. So we have a new platform where we have most of our product will be landed next year, where you could have interactive data, and we will be pleased also if you want to have a demo, please don't hesitate to reach to us. We can show you our product. For example, FSS operator benchmark and performance review is now digital, where you can really play with the different SAT operators. So it's a very interesting product that we just released 2 weeks ago now. So all of these publications are also available on our platform, so you can check them. And so if you move to the next slide, as mentioned by Lisa and Nathan, next one too. We have a specific offer for MSUA members. So you will have a 10% off available for you all year long. So you can either contact us directly and we will apply it on your purchase, or you can also use it directly on our website. And until the end of the year, so all our major and flagship SATCOM products are out right now. So FSS capacity pricing, satellite broadband connectivity survey, and all the maritime and in-flight connectivity report are out too. So we will be pleased also to increase your discount to 50% off if you want to have anything before the end of the year. On top of that, we're going to start the new edition of our research report on maritime connectivity services. So these reports aim to capture the latest market trends and usage patterns variation from the market. So in the next month, we are organizing exchanges with different stakeholders, so end user, antenna manufacturers, service providers, satellite operator, to collect information. And so we will also share through Lisa our survey. So if you are interested to participate, please do not hesitate to contact us. Of course, the contributor will benefit from incentive on the cost, but also including the possibility of free extract of the report when it will be published. So the next edition will be published the first quarter of 2021. So if you are also interested to take part to this survey, please don't hesitate. We will have a follow-up email with Lisa on this specific topic. Next slide, please. And the last information we wanted to share with you is that, so our flagship event was held virtually last November, but our next meeting is in January. So Euroconsult and Innovitec have chosen to combine their expertise to create this unique and first event, which is called AI in Space, which will bring together key stakeholders within the space and artificial intelligence industry. So it will be held virtually next January, and the registration are already open. So if you have interest in this topic, please do not hesitate to look at the website of this specific event. So I don't know if you have question on our research offer.
Everybody's very quiet today.
I was scared I lost you again, but apparently not.
No, we're here. We're still here. We're still here. So if anyone has any questions, definitely feel free to speak up, and especially any questions for Nathan on his presentation. Maybe some things came to mind while we were going through the other information, but also feel free to ask questions about this special offer for MSUA members only.
So thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making time for this. And so in the meantime, if anyone doesn't speak up, certainly feel free to interrupt me at any point. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to some just really quick MSUA news. So, but like I said, please feel free to just interrupt me if you have any questions for Nathan and Emmeline. They'll stay on until the end of the call. I hope you can both stay on just in case some questions come up.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to be in the wrong place here, but let's see if we can get this presenting. Hey, look at that. Okay, so just a few updates for a few member updates. Obviously, we heard from our guest speakers from Euroconsult. So thank you, Nathan and Emmeline, for being here. We really appreciate it. Just a quick reminder on renewals. The dues deadline is the end of December, but if you renew by December 10th, which is today, so call me if you haven't renewed yet and you still have plans to renew, and we can make sure that you can take advantage of this special offer, which is complimentary sponsorship of The Pulse, which is our new webinar series. And hopefully you saw the latest one that came out, which was on the autonomous edge. We have another one coming out on the public safety coming out very shortly. That will happen the second week of January. We will be announcing those dates shortly, so be sure to watch for that. And then any new members. So if you know another company that could benefit from being members of MSUA, definitely encourage them to take advantage of this offer too. You can reach me at president@msua.org. So definitely let me know if anyone maybe hasn't renewed yet, but has plans to. In terms of the webcast itself, this is The Pulse. And like I said, we have a number of additional episodes coming up. All of these, the public safety, we may have a gold sponsor on that already, but on the others, we do have sponsorship as well as speaking opportunities. So again, reach out to either me at president@msua.org or marketing@msua.org if you're interested in getting involved in these upcoming episodes and or creating another episode. We are putting together a whole, I guess, kind of editorial calendar for 2021. So definitely jump into this and take advantage of this opportunity. In terms of the Mobility Innovation Awards, as everyone knows probably by now, we usually do these events, the Innovation Awards, around satellite, and satellite has now moved out to July. So we've moved out our submission deadline to June. We'll be getting more information out on this. This is more just an update so that you know that we are still doing the awards. They just are moving from what would normally be March into the July timeframe along with satellite. So if you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out to us. And we will be putting updates in mobility news as well. Also, we are working on the editorial calendar right now for our executive spotlights. These are our most read and picked up articles every year. So we are putting together the whole editorial calendar for the executives that we will highlight in these articles. It can be, you know, leadership, CEO level people, but it can also be other leaders within your organizations. And it's really focused on highlighting thought leadership as far as the industry and or specific practice areas. So please, again, reach out to us using marketing@msua.org if you would like to get on this editorial calendar. This is one of the best MSUA benefits that we offer. So please make sure that you're taking advantage of this opportunity. Not only does Satin News pick up these articles every time we put them out, we also broadly promote these across social media, our website, and mobility news as well. So don't miss out on this opportunity as a MSUA member. Again, just contact marketing@msua.org to participate in this. And those are really the key updates that I wanted to share today. Certainly, if anyone's come up with any questions that you want to ask while I was chatting here, please feel free to speak up. Or if you have any questions about anything I just covered in terms of member benefits, feel free to ask as well. So I'll stop talking for a minute here. Any questions?
No, I will definitely attend next one.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds fantastic. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining us here today. Again, any questions about your membership or your membership benefits or how to take advantage of them, please feel free to reach out to me at president@msua.org, and I can make sure that I get you connected with the right people to take advantage of all of your benefits as MSUA members. We also do have an advisory group that has just formed, and we're working on a number of other initiatives. One of those being a member benefits review, as well as a user engagement program. And one of the key things that we talked about, we just had our first call yesterday, is a kind of member directory where you have the opportunity to talk about what your company is working on, what you're doing, what types of interests you have in terms of partnering with other organizations. And we will share those out only to member organizations. So we'll be sharing more information about that. We're planning to launch that in January. If you have any input though on any of those topics as well, please let me know. We would be happy to have you join our advisory group, or just give any feedback as well. So thank you all so much for joining today. And we look forward to talking with you in the new year. I can't believe I'm saying that. So yay 2021, right?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Lisa.
so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.